We're ready. We're live, 3 minutes after 5, and we're going to do the open session of our September 14th board meeting for the Mendocino Unified School District Board of Trustees. We've got a variety of people online and in person, and I think Erin, who is our note keeper, is online. Is that correct?
I'm here. I'm here.
You're here. So may I ask you to call the roll?
Trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin.
Here.
Trustee Morton. Trustee Morton.
Present.
Trustee Owen. Trustee Owen. Trustee Schaefer. Trustee Schaefer.
I'm here. Okay, we have nothing to report out of closed session. And so our next item is to approve the agenda. Were there any changes in the agenda? Seeing none, would someone make a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Aaron, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton. Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer. Trustee Schaefer.
Yes. And our first item is to swear in our new student trustee who is also appearing on Zoom. We have a, yeah, I see him there. I see is his picture online though?
So Knut, are you able to turn your video on, or is your connection bad?
Sure thing. Yeah, but it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
I think Aaron will give you that capability. And while we're waiting, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for volunteering for this position. And I don't know if we need his video.
No, we don't need it. I just, was interested because I've not met him, so.
Right.
I can vouch for him, Michael.
I think we have
I've
an
seen him in
interesting
person.
process that the student body, as part of their annual elections, elects the student trustee. And I think it's a great way to make to have someone be a representative of the students. So.
There he
Oh,
is.
There
the
he
video's
is.
working now.
Yep, there we go.
My camera's a bit iffy, but here I am.
Good to see you. I think
Good to see you too.
The oath of office that you have to read and affirm before we can officially include you on the board.
Yes, I did receive that.
So if we could go ahead and have you read that.
Sure. I, Knut Kvinslund, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Of course.
And I'm not sure all the things that you've been informed of, but we ask the student trustee to vote first when we call things to a question. That's a state law. And other than that, you participate as a full member, except your vote doesn't really count. And you're not invited to closed session. But we value your input. And you'll have a time in our agenda. You're listed under 8A for your first report as a student trustee. So you've got, while we do the rest of the things before then, to figure out what you want to say. Okay, we've done that. We have a public.
Written it out.
And so now you might want to turn your video off because your connection is pretty bad.
Okay, so we're now up to the public hearing Item number 6, sufficiency of instructional materials. The board will hear comments regarding the availability of textbooks and instructional materials. Is anybody here to participate in the public hearing? Seeing no one, is there anyone online, Aaron?
I see no one.
We'll close the public hearing. We'll go to item number 7, the consent agenda. These items are all adopted without discussion in one motion. Would someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Aaron, would you please call the roll?
Student trustee Kvinzon.
Here.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes. All right. So we're now up to 8A, 8.1, I mean. And you are back on, Canute, to give us a report for the first few weeks of school. in the
Sure
new
thing.
building.
Hey guys. Student Knut Kvinzland here, and I want to first cover our ASB, kind of the status of our ASB right now, and that I wanted to say that our ASB has really been stepping up its game this year, and I feel like everyone's a lot more focused this year than last year, and I'm really excited going into this year, seeing what we can do. And we don't have the freshmen on the ASB yet, but they are going to be elected soon, and they're going to be joining us for our weekly Monday meetings. And also, I wanted to talk about the new school, because I think that it has helped like the learning environment for all the students a lot. It's really helpful to not have the loud tools outside while in math class, and also the proper heating is I was more surprised with how much I actually appreciated that going into the new school than I thought I was going to, because it's really t-shirt temperature and it's easier to focus on work while warm. Also, a small thing is I really like how the bells are very calm and pleasant when they go off, because it's really nice. It's a nice transition from class to class. Also, the layout is very convenient. I like how there's a science wing, and I like how the math classes are close. And yeah, that's very convenient. And also, the new equipment has definitely helped out with the learning. For an example of this is the fume hood in Teacher May's classroom. We used it recently for a lab where we were experimenting with fire, and that definitely came in handy. And then I also appreciate the messages on the clocks that appear, and the landscaping is very nice, and also the quiet environment of the library I've used to study multiple times. On that note, I think that there's also an improvement that could be pointed out with the new school, which initially wouldn't have seemed like an issue, but I noticed it as well as other students, where when you go to the bathroom, there's not necessarily a hook or a place to set down the bathroom pass, so it's a bit inconvenient for sanitary, for being sanitary, with not having somewhere to put the bathroom pass. Then also, to get onto our sports coverage, the girls soccer has been going great, and they've been winning a lot of games. The boys soccer, they've been putting up a strong fight, and they lost their first 3 games, but they won their most recent one, their 4th game. And cross country also ran at Spring Lake and Fort Bragg yesterday. So yeah, thanks for listening to that.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right. I guess, Tobin, it's your turn to report.
I'm up next. Canute. Thank you. That was excellent and very thorough, and I don't feel like I have a whole lot more I need to add to that. I guess from my perspective, it's been wonderful being in this building. It was wonderful welcoming the community into the building last Saturday with our ribbon cutting. I think it was very successful. It was celebratory. People were just excited to see the building and see the pictures in the hallway. So that was a wonderful event. I agree with what Canute said, that I think having a learning environment like this, as we all know from research, really does make a difference. One of our substitutes that was here last week said he felt like everyone was just lighter, the building and the people, the kids and everyone. So I think it really does make a difference. And once we get those hooks in the bathroom, I think it's going to be perfectly dialed in. So that's a great suggestion, Canute. So appreciate that. Keep those coming. I'll just tell you guys a little bit about some of the things that my staff is focusing on. Our professional goals for this year, we're focusing on assessment, and we are also focusing on one of our school-wide goals, which is to create a environment or a culture of excellence and perseverance, kind of rigor and sustained effort in our students. And so we did a lot of work around what does that look like? What are those, if we are actually living that culture, what does it look like in our staff? What does it look like in our students? What does it look like in our parents? And we came up with some indicators of those, turn those into goals and things we can start acting on right away. So that's sort of the first business that we've been working on, and that'll also eventually lead into looking at assessment. We will do in the next few weeks, gather assessment results and look at leveling of rubrics, like what is excellent, what is proficient, and so on. So it's just a good exercise to calibrate with the staff. So that's the work we're doing. As a whole school, we have a theme this year, which is Pride in Place and Planet, and it's obviously inspired by having this beautiful new place, this beautiful new campus, and making that connection between caring for this place, and if we can't do that, it's pretty hard to care for something much bigger. So Pride in Place and Planet, caring for campus, community, and beyond. So when you walk in the hallways, we did an activity the first day where students brainstormed some of the things that might look like. What would that look like if we're doing that? So yeah, we're very happy as our students to be finally in this building, and the construction, like Canute said, is all much farther away. We don't hear the saws and all that. We did have an impromptu fire drill today because they were doing some concrete sawing down there and created some dust, and so, you know, there's still obviously a construction site here going on, but that's just more exciting things, you know, facilities for the future. It's going to be quite a place once it's all said and done. So looking forward to it.
What's your enrollment this year?
Enrollment at the high school is 153. We have 6 in the continuation and a couple students in the independent study program. We've kind of been, since we've been cutting back on, you know, English sections and classes over the last few years, we're kind of purposely making sure that we don't go over that cap that we've set for ourselves, and knowing that there's more cuts on the way, and not knowing what impact or where the impact will be on those. We've been very cautious about letting transfer students in. So I think we could have, you know, more students if we had more open doors, but we're being very careful not to. And we have large classes. We have very small classes, and we have classes of, you know, 28. So we just need to be real careful. A couple students come in, all of a sudden we've got 30 students in a section because that's what fits their schedule. So we just have to be careful, you know. And I'd say right now this building it could definitely take more, but it's, you know, we can fit everyone in here at brunch and seated, and you know, it's a great size for us right now. But we'll be able to expand if we need to. Yeah.
Any other questions for Tobin? Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.
Jason,
All right, so I'll make a comment about the grand opening. I thought that it went really well. QKA, Kevin Chapin from QKA was here. He gave a speech. We had 2 student speakers as well, and they were great speeches, as we have come to know from our high school students. And I was able to give the introduction, and I'm just going to thank the 4 people that I thanked at that, during that day as well. And so first, the community. The community supported this bond by over 70% back in 2020 when most school bonds failed. Then I thanked, and I'll thank again Tobin for all of his extra work, hard work that he's done. He's taken a lot off of my plate. I don't take that for granted, and I don't forget that. So thank you, Tobin. And then I thanked Wind Spirit because he has pretty much made this his full-time job, and he's now a part-time contractor. And then our neighbors, our immediate neighbors, they've had to put up with a lot of noise and dust and disruption. So they've been patient, and asking them to be patient for another 8 months, 6 months. Negotiations have started with the MTA. So we are going through the contract line by line, looking for any discrepancies, changing dates, fixing typos, that kind of thing. It's a good exercise for us to do every 3 years. It really teaches us more about the contract. Like, oh, I didn't know that was in there, or what is it? We talk about what each line means if we have to, for clarification as well. Haven't met yet with CMIS. I'm meeting. She's here actually. I'm meeting with Diana soon. I think it's next week, or maybe 2 weeks, to talk about the licensing of our preschool that we're going to be putting in, our pre-K, TK at the K-8. We do need to get a license from the state in order to do that. So she'll be helping us out with that. And then, I got my bus driver's license it was about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago. And since that time, I've done a couple of field trips, and I've gone on some runs with Seal. But yesterday I did my first all alone with students. And so,
Which route?
Albion. So I did the Albion run, and I was in the propane bus. And I was going up Little River near Van Dam up the hill, and I heard the loudest bangs I've ever heard in my life. Just boom, and then 2 more. The bus died on the hill. So I put the hazards on, put the brakes on, called Seal, and I said, "We got a problem." And she said, "Oh, it does that all the time. just turn it on and keep going." So I did. The kids we're getting shot at, we're gonna blow up. One poor boy looked at me with tears, a little kindergartner, said, "Jason, are we safe?" I'm like, "Oh, yes, we're safe. This is normal." So anyway, I'm driving again Tuesday. I'll be in the morning, so we'll see what happens. But it was an eventful first run. Got that out of my system.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, any questions for Jason? Next would be MTA. Diane, are you here to do that? Yep.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Knut. Welcome. So, as Jason mentioned, negotiations got started, and so I know in the past couple of years we've had board members present for that, and just want to kind of follow through with you guys, see if there's one of you who's able to make each meeting again. They'd love to make sure that that happens this year. Recently, there's been quite an uptick of COVID. And there is some concern, not just MTA, but I think CMIS as well, about the OSHA rules that we have to follow for staff in staying away from campus and not being able to return. But then we're having to use our sick days for those days we're required to stay away. And of course, by all means, we want to not come to school sick, but there are I'm hearing some concerns around if people are using up all their sick days for COVID, then later in the year, if they get the flu, are they going to feel like they need to come to school because they've used up all their sick days? So that's something that would be good for us to follow up on. Before, previously, those days were covered, and that has ended. So that's something to think about. And we have our first union meeting in about 2 weeks, and Meg will be there to talk to the teachers and address the financial situation. So I'm sort of tasked with generating questions. So far, the question is just like, what the heck? So Meg will meet with us, we'll ask her questions and get the picture directly from her. So, any questions for me? Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Is anyone here from CMUS?
No.
No? Okay. Board trustee reports?
Yeah, not much of a report. So more on a personal level, my wife Sage is a new science teacher at the K-8 in 7th and 8th grade. She's really enjoying it so far, so that's good. I think being away from the profession for a few years has refreshed her, and she's kind of coming at it with new eyes, and so that's neat to see. Eli started high school, and I'm hearing all kinds of stories. Some of the highlights include the piano playing here in the mornings in the student center. So, and he loves all of his teachers, but Marshall and Diana in particular, he's said very good things about. I have to say that because they're both in the room with me, but no, it's true. So just hearing wonderful things about the high school. It's really fun to hear the stories he comes home with. So.
Mark?
I too attended the grand opening on Saturday and basically have the same comments. The speeches were fantastic. Tobin's, the kids' speeches were just really good. In walking the halls, the comments from the public were just, everybody was tickled. Everybody was pleased. That was great. I wish more people had come, but those who did really were impressed with the building. I had just a thought about it that day, you know, looking at the pictures in the hall and feeling like I'm in the same building I've been in for decades, except it's not. And when we originally started planning this, I thought it was crazy that we weren't tearing down all the studs and starting over with a south-facing school that was, you know, 21st century on that level. But being in here and feeling like it's still the same shape it was mostly, the pictures are still there in the same place they were. Having history, carrying history forward really makes a difference, I think, and I'm glad we did it this way. So that was just delightful. And the other thing is, even better than that was walking in here on a school day and just seeing kids and teachers and counselors and administration in the building living here it was just impressive, and it just felt really good.
Oh, good. Thank you. I have nothing to add on that. So let's see here. I know we changed the time of our parent community comment. So I think maybe we'll go to that. Is there anybody here who came to address the board under our parent and community comment time slot? I see none. Aaron, is there anybody online?
I see no one.
Thank you. All right, so now we can move on to 10.1, and our first task is to interview and appoint a new trustee for the Elk trustee area. You know, we do this rarely when someone resigns, and we have 60 days to select someone and appoint them, as opposed to going to an election. Obviously, elections are very expensive, so we do this, and this position will only be until next December. And the Elk seat and the Comshie seat and must be the Mendocino, no, not the Mendocino seat, the Casper seat, all expire next December. So there'll be an election next November, a year from November, not this coming November, a year from November for that. Anyway, we have two wonderful volunteers who put their names forward to be trustee. And should we do it alphabetically?
Sure.
And the process is fairly straightforward. I mean, we have a series of questions, of which we've chosen 5 that we will ask each candidate. And then after first we interview the one, and then we'll interview the second, that the board will then discuss in open session who we want to choose, and then we'll vote on that. And then as soon as we finish that vote, then that person will step forward and swear the same oath that Knut swore earlier, and they'll sit at the table with us and be an equal partner in this wonderful thing we call Mendocino Unified School Board. I guess I can't legally require that when we're interviewing the first candidate, the second candidate leaves the room, but it is sort of a recommended and polite thing to do, so you don't hear their responses. And then when we interview you, we get your first take on those questions as opposed to reacting to what the first candidate said. So I hope that that's the case. Jason, who is alphabetically our first candidate?
So Mia would be first.
Mia would be first. So,
And that's Lisa.
Lisa.
So we have Mia Bloyd and Lisa James.
okay.
chair for that or anything, Michael?
No, yeah, I guess that's probably best.
If I put a mic on the chair, would that work?
Yeah. So Mia, if you
And I
would,
can open up the library for people to wait.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have the questions or you just want me to ask them?
I'll let you do them. I want to thank you again for volunteering. This is, it's a labor of love. It takes a fair amount of time and diligence, and just by the process of filling out the application, you know how detailed some of those questions were.
Yes.
So we've chosen 5 questions to ask. We ask each of you the same questions. And Jason's going to ask the questions, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right, so the first question is, what do you see as the basic purpose of the public schools? And what is the role of the school or the Board of Trustees in fulfilling that purpose?
I see the basic purpose of the school is to communicate with the students and the community and have that bond together. And the school board is an essential part in keeping that connection with the community.
All right, number 2, what are you proud of in this district? So this is kind of, there's like 4 questions here, so.
We'll do it all at once.
Yeah, no, I will. What are you proud of in this district? What would you like to accomplish as a board member? And which is your highest priority and why?
What am I proud of in this district? I guess I went through the whole 12 years of school in this district. So I've always been in the school district. What was the second part?
What would you like to accomplish as a board member?
I think I can give my insight of living far away from the main district of Mendocino, living way down in Elk. I have the knowledge of what it takes, because I rode the bus every day of school through my high school, from kindergarten to 12th grade. I rode the school bus, and it took an hour, so I have that personal experience of the struggles it takes to get to school. And so I think I could accomplish my views on that side on the board.
And then, which is your highest priority? What is your highest priority?
I think would be just to make sure the students of any age that are from the Elk area get represented in the school district.
All right. Number 3, describe your response if a parent cornered you in the grocery store and asked for your support on a particularly hot issue.
It would depend on the issue, but I would listen to what their view was, their point of view, and then I would make an informed decision that would be best for me. And if I was a board member, I would make sure that it wouldn't impact the board.
Okay. Next question. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on an important policy issue?
Could you read the first part of that?
Let me read the whole thing again. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Ooh, that's a, again, I think it just comes down to making sure that the board and the community are together on the same page on the policies.
Okay. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about, and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
I personally don't know any recent board issues because I haven't really followed the board, but I think I could make an informed decision.
Okay. Can I ask one more? Just
Sure.
this last one. So do you have any questions for the board to help you prepare to take on this commitment if you're chosen?
I guess if I am chosen, just kind of help, like, guide me, like, what I'm supposed to do. And if we work as a team, then it would make everything smooth.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think
Great.
if you'll
Thanks so
trade
much.
places with Lisa in the library, and tell her to come in for the hot seat.
Thanks a lot.
Lisa, if you'd come up and sit in the hot seat here. We have 6 questions that Jason is going to ask.
Okay.
And,
All right.
go ahead.
Okay. What do you see as the basic purpose of the public schools, and what is the role of the Board of Trustees in fulfilling that purpose?
As far as the schools go, it's to educate all the students, ensure that all the students get a high education, to foster social skills, to prepare them to be good, informed citizens, to prepare them to be part of the workforce, and to teach them to interact with other students in a kind way.
And then what is the role of the board in fulfilling that purpose?
The board, as I understand it, is to develop policy and to provide that to the school to help them guide the education of the students.
All right, next questions. What are you proud of in this district? What would you like to accomplish as a board member? And what is your highest priority and why?
You may have seen in my application, I kind of came to this differently. I'm just new to the area, so it's hard for me to speak to the things I really like and don't like. So what I did was I reached out to community members to find out what they thought, and I spoke to 6 people. And the thing that I heard the most that needed improvement was communication. And coming in as a new person, I don't know a lot about the community or the policies or the board. I think that would be an easy way for me to come in and make an impact quickly, because it's easy to reach out to people and have conversations. And I think that would be good for everyone I'm speaking to, and then it would really help me because I would learn quickly from the community what their concerns are and what their priorities are.
All right. Third question. Describe your response if a parent cornered you in the grocery store and asked for your support on a particularly hot issue.
I think the first thing I would do would be to listen intently to what the parent had to say, if it was a parent, and to let them know that I appreciated them sharing that with me, to thank them for their interest and for speaking to me. I think I'd let them know that I would let the board know what they said to me and maybe invite them to come to a school board meeting so they could present that idea themselves. But I absolutely would not agree that I was going to vote in any certain way in any case. And I think that's easier for me since I am new. I don't have a lot of, my best friend from high school or my mother's next door neighbor or anything like that. Pretty much everyone's new.
Right. All right. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on an important policy issue?
Well, I think that's probably from community outreach, meetings, maybe coffees with small groups of people, and then also through written communications. I know some school districts have ways for people to communicate via email or something like that. I know it's important that because we have a diverse population to make sure that maybe people that don't speak English as well as some have an opportunity to interact and know that their views are welcome and that they can comfortably express those views.
All right. So the fact that you're pretty new to the community, this next question might be hard, but I'll ask it anyway.
Okay.
Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Well, of course, I looked online to see if I could find something that came up recently, and I did see some articles about the new wells, I guess it is. And so I read through that article. So what you would need to do, or what I would do, is just gather all of the information that you possibly can from a diverse group of people and listen to the concerns of the students and the faculty and the community, identify what the issues are that the community has. Like it sounded like they had some issues with, would the community's water be reduced in certain situations? Maybe there was some concerns. I had to kind of read into the article a little bit. Maybe concerns about trees or landscaping that maybe is being removed, and fencing. There might have been something else I can't remember. So just make sure that you think of all of those and take those all into consideration and just make the best decision you can possibly make for the school and the community.
All right, thanks. And then the final question is, what questions do you have for the board to help you prepare to take on this commitment if you're chosen?
Do you have a mission statement? I couldn't find a mission statement.
We do. I don't know if it's on our agendas. The board has priorities that are on the front of each agenda.
Okay.
But if you couldn't find our mission statement on our website, that's a problem.
Okay.
So
communication.
I'm gonna make sure that it's there and in
Okay,
plain
maybe
sight.
it is, and I just
So-
missed it. I did
Well,
see the
but-
bylaws, and the bylaws look like they were adopted in 2017. Are those the current bylaws then?
If they're on the website, they're the current ones.
Okay.
Well, they're all different.
It's on the
They-
internet,
yeah.
But
right?
you know, I think if you took all the policies and procedures, it's quite a big stack of papers, and we go over them constantly, but there are some that are older than that even, you know,
Yeah.
that haven't been looked at. But, you know, most of it's mandated by the state anyway.
Yes, I noticed that there's a lot of
You just have to follow
rules to
the-
follow, yes. So that leads me to the next question, like, what is the orientation or what is the training for a new board member? Is there any? Just that big stack of paper?
I think that, you know, my response to that would be, you know, it's sort of total immersion, you know, because you know, whoever we select will get seated tonight and be expected to participate. In terms of you know, additional training, there is additional training available through California school boards that some people like. I didn't find it particularly valuable myself, but certainly we have lots of things to read
Yeah.
that would orient you. But I think that the major thing I would say is if you feel there's a gap in your knowledge and information, that you have, say, I need to be brought up to speed on this, and then we will make sure that that happens one way or another.
Okay. And the other thing I learned from speaking to community members, one of the things that they saw as a need is a music program. So I'm wondering, in a case like a music program, would you go out and try to get grants for that? And if so, would the board work on that, or does that happen somewhere else?
Well, I think the board has, in the past, you know, adopted a policy that says we want to have a music program. We have instructed last year to hire a music teacher. We were unable to find a qualified music teacher. I think we are in the same process again this year of repeating that process. We have some funding available from, you know, the recent, you know, initiative that was passed for arts funding that allows some of that could go to a music program. But yes, we also look for grant. And the board, again, directs staff to implement things, and then staff says we can do this, and these are the problems, and these are the realities, and then we try to keep an eye on what's happening. But, you know, our boots aren't on the ground. We're giving sort of direction to the superintendent who's passing it on to the staff, and, you know, then we can ask for reports on how it's being implemented.
Yeah, for the past 2 years, we've had the music position open, and we've had one candidate apply. We offered him the job, and he didn't take it.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks so much.
I guess you can go and get Mia. I think it's, you know, it's harder in this situation than it is in other situations because we only have 3 board members present. And we have to then be unanimous in our choice. And
It can't be 2-1?
can't be 2-1.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All our board.
Oh, because it's
decisions,
5.
There are 5 members on the board, and you need to have a majority of the board, which is 3.
Right.
In favor of it for it to
Really?
be.
You
functioning
can't just have a
boards.
quorum voting and
No.
a majority of that quorum.
No.
Interesting. I learn something new every day.
So, you know, it's,
And the orientation continues.
indeed. I was saying, Mia, that this is an especially difficult decision for us because we only have 3 board members present, and we have to have all 3 of us agreeing on a choice. You know, the alternative would be if we don't find consensus, that we could say, go for an election, but that would, I think, be an expense that we're not particularly interested in incurring. And So I guess one of the easier ways would be to just go through and ask each person who their top candidate is, and then explain that, and then if we have 3 people saying the same thing, then that's a decision. If not, then we can talk about, what we do, and that's in the next step before we make a formal vote.
I'd like to start just by thanking Lisa and Mia, both of you, very much for stepping forward and volunteering, and then going through this process. It's got to be the most awkward job interview ever, doing it at a public meeting. So I didn't have to go through any of this, and so I feel for you, and I'm really glad I didn't. I don't know how I would have answered some of those questions, and I'm sitting here. So thank you, and we really appreciate it. For me personally, and this is just who I am, I probably weigh more the application than the in-person, because in-person, doing that is hard. And the application you can take your time with and decide what you want to say and that sort of thing. And it gave me a little more sense of who you are and your background and some of that, which the questions didn't really. Yeah, and I guess for me, it felt like one of the things I really liked about Lisa in particular was the research that you did, being new to the community, doing the research to talk to community members and hear from them, and it sort of shows what your perspective would be as a board member of listening to the community. Similarly to me, I really value the fact that you went through the school district just like I did many years ago, and you have that personal experience coming from Elk and knowing what it's like to be a part of that community. So obviously great things from both of you that I really appreciate. I think for me, if I were to vote right now, I'd probably lean toward Lisa, just to kind of get the ball rolling.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
It's a tough decision. I really appreciate it when people have a district background, and I've known Mia since she was very small. That means a lot to me, and her family's been involved in the school district forever. Her grandmother was the district bus driver down there for ages. We wrote a book about her. So I appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate Lisa's perspective in terms of curiosity about living in a new neighborhood and having an idea of what you do to get connected. That means a lot to me. And some of her background, I think, with us in a real budget crunch right now, having somebody with accounting skills and so on, is very helpful to the district. And I would also just say again, thank you to both of you for doing this, because it is so hard to get people to do this. Most of us, I think Michael had an actual election once, too. I've never been elected, as in an election with an opponent, and Emily hasn't either, and that's usually the case here. We do not have elections with people with differing views. It's a small community, and that's frustrating, but also understandable. And it's a difficult decision. I think at this point I would lean toward Lisa.
Well, again, I congratulate both of you for volunteering. I mean, it's somebody who has spent as much time on school district business over the last 20 years. It's good to know that other people think it's a valuable thing to do. It's sort of reassuring, whereas if nobody showed up, then it would be very discouraging. So I think that's great. I think Mark identified sort of the quandary in terms of community background and experience versus an outsider's knowledge and a little more professional skill level for the kinds of problems we're facing. And it's a challenge to try to figure that out. And I think, as a voter, I would have that same issue. One of the interesting things about our process is that the electorate for, even though we call it the Elk trustee position, the electorate is the entire district. And that's because, for all sorts of reasons. But, if there is an election, people in Mendocino and Comchee and Little River vote for that Elk seat. Why we call it the Elk seat is you have to live in that area to be, a trustee. And, I think we benefit by having that geographic distribution of our members. I know Emily, at one point, before she was on the board, was very strongly opposed to that process. And, I respect her, her action in that regard. But I think that personally, as I said at the time, I think that it benefits the district by having people representing all the spread out areas. And here we have two candidates, both of whom would be, I think, great additions to our board. And I've heard both Emily and Mark favor Lisa, and I can see the reasons why they're saying that. And as I said, I think that at this point we need to not make it a more difficult process. So I'll go with that. And so I think we can call the roll if you want to make a motion.
Sure, I'll move to elect Lisa as the new Elk board member.
Second.
Aaron, are you still with us?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Student trustee Kinsland.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes. Well, thank you, both of you. And Lisa, if you come up here, and Jason has the oath of office.
Passing it on down.
Okay. So if you read this, put your name in where it says blank.
Okay. I have my glasses, luckily. I, Lisa James, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear the true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the board.
Can I sit here now?
Yes, exactly. Out of the frying pan into the fire.
So I need to read a statement too.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, so this is the final piece of this puzzle. It's a statement that I need to read. This is a provisional appointment. So the Mendocino Unified School District Governing Board of Trustees has made a provisional appointment to fill a vacancy left by the resignation effective June 7th, 2023 of,
August 7th.
it's actually June.
Oh.
We talked about that today.
Oh, okay.
Of trustee James Gay. On September 14th, 2023, the board appointed Lisa James to fill the vacancy and serve to the next regularly scheduled election for district governing board members, November of 2024. This appointment shall become effective unless a petition calling for a special election with a sufficient number of signatures is filed with the Office of the County of Superintendent of Schools within 30 days of the date of the provisional appointment. So it becomes official after 30 days.
Right, okay. All right. Thank you again, May.
Thank you, Mia.
Mia.
Mia, sorry. All right.
Should I stay here? Is this
No,
Our
you
next
stay there.
item.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. I've got the wrong page here. Okay. Item 10.3 is our monthly update on the modernization and construction of phases 1 and 2 of the high school project. And Don, are you with us?
Yes, I am with you. My video's not quite working just yet, but I'm with you.
Okay, so we'll do without seeing your face, and you can report just on the audio line.
Okay. But thank you for indulging me to be remote today. I forgot it was going to be at the actual high school. That's a little bit disappointing. I should have remembered that. But I did get there for Sunday. I mean, for Saturday's ribbon cutting. It was a very nice event. I brought my wife, and we enjoyed being there a lot. It was really refreshing seeing all the people walk and look at the photos on in the hallway and their reactions to the effort that we put into the building. So that was really great. Um, I don't know if Aaron can share her screen or I can share my screen, um, or I could just verbally walk through it. It's a pretty light day as far as reporting, so maybe I'll just wing it here. And that's partly why I wanted to go remote because I had a pretty full day. Um, One question that came up on phase, I'll report on phase one first. One question was what's remaining, and if you'll see in your report, I listed 3 items. The door closures of some of the doors need to be replaced and adjusted to meet ADA. And oh, there we go. Um, if you go to the third page, Aaron, um, some of the doors need to meet ADA tolerances, and it's a pretty tough order to make. So they ordered new closures and of the same type, and they're going to arrive and adjust that. That's the one and only item that's keeping us from closing out with DSA. Um, and then the rainwater meters were installed. There was a couple of little transitions, about 18 inches long, they discovered they needed to make. So they ordered those, and they're being fabricated. So once those three transition pieces are fabricated, they'll come in and install those. And then window balancers are devices within the windows that make the window operate either hard or easy. And they ordered new ones because we felt that in transit that some of the balancers got out of whack. So those balancers have arrived, and they've got a schedule to slip in the classrooms while class is not in to replace them. They did replace some of them already, and it does help the window. I mean, they are large windows; they are heavy to open, but they're going to be less heavy once these new balancers are put in. And then a fourth item, which I didn't list here because I thought it was going to be completed, but it wasn't yet, is they still need to put some plexiglass over some of the pictures. So hopefully people aren't poking their fingers on it too much. I know Sylvia and I have been a little worried about that. So those are all the items remaining in phase one. Um, and yeah, sure, go for it.
On the, the window, opening balancers,
Uh-huh.
is that a fairly quick thing to do to replace or do you have to take the window out and do it internally in the frame?
It's in the frame, and I think if I recall their comment from yesterday, it's about a 40-minute process per classroom. And they have a schedule when the classes are. Tobin shared that. So they're going to slip in on when the classroom's not occupied and do that. And it's just the double hung or single hung windows that are the ones that need adjusting, not the ones that push out. So, but they are large windows. So it ought to go pretty seamlessly now, given that they're not going to be intruding on the classes to make this happen. And then the last thing I did, one issue I mentioned last month was the health department kind of switching gears and wanting the grease trap outside of the kitchen. And I've drafted a letter, or actually, Jason drafted a letter, and I drafted an email to correspond with that, and I sent it to the health department to try to make that issue go away. And really, the only outstanding thing once we work through this is to file a notice of completion with the county, and then at that point we'll come to the board. Well, we'll come to the board for the notice of completion, And then once that's filed, then 35 days later, we can release their retention. We're holding 5% of their contract right now, but we're not quite ready to do the notice of completion yet until those 3 or 4 items are completed. That's pretty much what with phase 1. Before I transition to phase 2, any other questions? Um, if not, I'll just I'll keep going. Uh, okay. Phase 2 is really straightforward. We're just getting it going. They have demolished the interior of the tech building to the extent they need to. They are in the process of demolishing the interior of the gym to the extent they need to. Um, they're building a temporary partition in the gymnasium, so the majority of gymnasium could be used informally by the district, and have a portion of it quartered off to do the construction. And that's happening right now. So they haven't started demolishing the stage yet. That'll happen after they put up the temporary partitions in the gym. Aaron, if you want to scroll to the next slide. The early procurement items have been ordered because we did that a month or 2 prior to awarding the contract. I think from when I get a little further on the schedule, you'll see that about October we should have those items. And probably the only other thing that's a bit of a head scratcher now is to coordinate the site work, because we're not in the summertime, and both we need to occupy the space and the school needs to occupy the space though. But we're working with Tobin. I think it's working out, or it looks like it's going to work out. That kind of activity they're doing right now is after the demo, selective demo, is do some saw cutting to get under the building slab so they could do new underground plumbing. And there's site work that needs to be done, which I just spoke about. Aaron, if you want to go to the next slide. They did provide a draft overall master schedule for phase 2, and that's what you see here. You can look at it in more detail from your handout. But the gist of it is the plan is to be completed with the project with the exception of the emergency generator by March of 2024. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the end. About mid-March is what's the projected time. You can see the last dates there. Next slide. Oh, one more, sorry. Here's the tech building being gutted. There's some storage that was added, non-DSA, that you see the ceiling there. That's got to come out because it was not DSA approved. And a little bit more interior demolition, like the saw cutting of the slab has not occurred in these pictures yet to do the plumbing. The next slide. And that's the kitchen as it stands right now. All the equipment's been removed, and they're getting ready to move forward with the underground or under floor plumbing in this instance because it's not on a slab. I think that might be the last slide. So we're off on a good start in phase 2, and I think we're finally buttoning up phase 1. With that, if Tobin's there, if he wants to speak of our experiences, if not, I'm pretty satisfied where we are with the start of construction and closing of phase 1. Some of it has been moved to the K8. I think the freezer or refrigerator is going to be used at the K8. The gas stoves and gas convection ovens are not going to be salvaged because we're not going to have gas in the kitchen. So those still are in the kitchen to be removed and sent away. But what we can reuse, we are reusing or repurposing elsewhere.
I mean, are they put on a surplus list and then members of the public can buy them, or how does that work?
Well, Wind Spirit was, he's not able to attend, but didn't he say that he had a contact down in Santa Rosa, in the Santa Rosa area? And then if we can find a way to get him down there, we could probably get some value for those. He's back on. I don't know if he's able to talk.
Yeah, I'll let Wind Spirit speak of that if he can.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. I sent some photos to Myers Restaurant Supply, and so they said the induction ovens are obsolete, not worth anything. There's possibly a little bit of value in the gas ranges, but most of that value might be lost if they had to come get them. So currently, if anyone wants to give those two things a ride to Santa Rosa, let me know and we can coordinate that. The 3-basin sink is going to be stored in the locker rooms and reinstalled in completion. And two of the freestanding tables got relocated for the culinary's temporary use, and will go back into the finished project. The hood is not salvageable, except maybe for some stainless material to be reused. I think that's about the extent of it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The fridge is being used by culinary, and the freezer. I don't know if it's moved yet. It's going to be going up to the K8 to be used in the kitchen up there.
Thank you for being so on top of that, Wind Spirit.
Yeah, thank you, Wind Spirit.
You're welcome.
I have a thought. I know Elk is going to redo their community center kitchen. I don't know if anything would be useful there they might want to buy, but if there's a list, I can pass that along.
Yeah, I certainly think that before we discard them, we should put them on the announced list or whatever to say they're available.
It's going to be a while before they do it at the community center. They're moving slow on that one. They have other stuff that they did, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to 10.4, the budget update. And I think Meg's here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Yes, I'm here.
So do you have screen access so you can?
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
That doesn't mean you get to leave yet.
Oh, there we are. Okay. So you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a budget update on the unaudited actuals, which the board, you're going to have to approve as our closing final books for, or unaudited books for 22-23. So this first, I know this is weird. I'm going to can you see this stuff that I have on the top of my screen? Is there like, okay, perfect. You don't see what I see. Perfect. Okay. I see other stuff and it's like, oh, wow. Okay. So this is the revenue comparison of where it compares where we ended with where I thought we were going to end at estimated actuals in June. So over here in the total column is kind of where I'm looking. So overall, our revenue was better by about 300,000 or 3.17%. Our LCFF funding, which includes property tax and state aid, was only up fractionally, 1/3%. Our federal revenues were up on higher Title I funding. State revenues, you can see we had, a bigger increase in unrestricted dollars and then an increase in restricted dollars. So the unrestricted dollars had to do with unrestricted lottery. We had a prior year adjustment that was to the positive, and then higher current year lottery for 22-23. Same with the restricted lottery, and we also restored those programs that were slated to go away at adoption Those were restored on the restricted side. And then I added in the 22-23 KIT grant, which is a cafeteria grant that will be in the general fund rather than the cafeteria fund. And then the GASB 68 Stirs on Behalf was a negative. So it brought this down by about $70,000. So all told, state revenue was up 10%. Local revenues were up about 30%. And again, you see, a big thing here in unrestricted. And so on the unrestricted side, we had higher interest than I had been projecting because interest rates have been slowly creeping up. And the county was late, in posting interest. So it would, we didn't really know where it was going to end up. And we had a few more donations on the, probably on both sides, unrestricted, restricted. On the restricted side, we had an increase in the special ed allocation and the direct services allocation from MCOE. So what this did, the increase in special ed has the effect of reducing our contribution. You'll see that later on, reducing our contribution from the general fund to the restricted fund, or the unrestricted fund to the restricted fund for special ed. So it's a plus to us. The last thing on here is this new fair market value cash at county. And so this is a new audit requirement where we need to book our portion of the fair market value of the investments held at the county. And so for the general fund here, it's a loss of $39,000. And in the SACS report, it is combined with this local revenue section. But I set it out because it's an accounting entry where we post it to the books in June, on June 30th, and then we take it off the books on July 1st. So I wanted to make sure I kept it out so I knew where it was. So this next slide goes over property taxes. And to begin with, we're going to look at this section that's colored over here. So the blue column is where I thought we were going to end up. The white column is where we ended up. So we were fractionally better overall, just like the last slide showed. But year over, we were better by about 3.4%. So secured property taxes is what we're most interested in because that's our biggest source of revenue. It ended up being up 3% over prior year. So that's comparing this white column to the orange column over here. So we're up 3%. The next largest source of revenue is timber tax. And you can see here it was up 74%. So overall, our taxes were up $195,000 over prior year. And so what I'm wanting to show down here is we can see what our secured property taxes has been doing historically back to 16-17. So our increases have been fairly stable. We saw it creep up here in 17-18, 18-19. And 16-17, I think we were still kind of coming out of the last recession. And I think, it feels like these were starting to creep up and then we were hit with the pandemic. And that's what these years are. These are the pandemic years. And then here we are coming out of it. But you can see what our annual increase is in secured property taxes. And these 3 years that are highlighted in green, timber tax had the effect of reducing, our overall tax revenue. So where we were up 142,000 with secured tax, timber tax ate that away. And so you can see at the end, our total property tax for 1920 was only up about $49,000. So even though we have secured property tax doing something, I think we need to be mindful of what timber tax is doing and looking at timber tax really as a one-time revenue source, because you can see up here, they were projecting in June that it was going to be 228. Prior to that, it was, throughout the year, it's been much lower. And we came in at 211. Last year, we were at 120. The year before that, we were at 179. And you can see how it's kind of gone down every year. It's now creeping back up. Prior to this, I don't have it on these slides, but prior to this, it was kind of it was ranging from like 120, 150, 160. Some years it got up to 200. But it's kind of all over the place. And we're at the mercy of the county's projections when we build the budget and we update the budget throughout the different periods. So are there any questions on revenue? I'll take that as no. So this next slide goes over expenditures. And again, here's where I thought we were going to end up. Here's where we ended up. Our total expenditures were $67,000, $68,000 more than where I thought in June. Our transfers in, I won't go through each piece, but our transfers in were higher. I transferred, when we first started the water project, there were some fees that had to be paid immediately, and we paid them out of the general fund. And so as the water project kind of, the planning phase of it is kind of slowing down, we were able to get, the dollars were coming back, and we were able to pay ourselves back, if you will. So that's what this represents. The contribution here, you can see it in the unrestricted and restricted. This is lower by $211,000, $212,000. And this is where we make contributions from the unrestricted general fund to the restricted general fund to pay for such things as special ed and, other restricted things like maintenance and whatnot. And because we had more in special ed allocation from MCOE, this was able to be lower this year than what we had projected. Transfers out, this line here. Here you can see that our transfers out is a lot lower than we had projected. And this is a function of two things. The transfers out are the monies that we transfer from general fund to 01 in the SACS forms to mostly preschool and cafeteria, but we do other transfers to Fund 40 or some other fund. 14 is another fund that we transfer out to. But this $70,000, do you have a question? This $71,000 is made up of the transfer out to preschool. So MCOE had additional preschool dollars this year that they needed to distribute. So we were the recipient of most of those dollars because, we had a high contribution, one of the highest contributions in the county. And so they were able to give us enough so that we didn't have to make the contribution this year from the general fund to preschool. So part of this $70,000 is $50,000 in what I was projecting that we were going to contribute to the preschool. Most of the rest of it is because of the cafeteria transfer was lower, and most of that was due to one-time funding and the new funding we got from Universal Meals from the state side. And that was about $27,000 in savings. So we benefited here in the transfers out. And then this just puts it all together. Well, here's where our beginning balance was. It stays the same. We take away our deficit spending. I guess I should go back and tell you what we're deficit spending. We were deficit spending total $211,000 versus $471,000 projected at estimated actuals. So our ending fund balance went from $2.67 million to $2.35 million. It's broken down in these various categories. We are able to maintain our reserve for economic uncertainty here, and our fund balance is up by about 18% over estimated actuals. So these next slides are program slides. So this is home to school transportation. Again, this is where I thought we were going to end up. This is where we ended up. We had expenditures of $540,000, which was better by $27,000. Home to school transportation doesn't really receive its own source of funding. So back when LCFF came into being, transportation dollars were one of the things that were swept into the LCFF calculation. So at the time in 12-13, when it all started, Mendocino Unified was receiving $392,000 for home to school transportation. Currently, we have to make a contribution, if you will, to that money so we can fund transportation. So this entitlement never receives a COLA. We never get an increase from state aid. It just kind of stays there at that level. So that's how we looked to estimated actuals. When we compare it to last year, we had expenditures of 540,000 as compared to 532,000. And that last year we included a transfer to Fund 15, the Transportation Equipment Fund. And so expenditures were up 1.5%. If we take the Fund 15 transfer out, our expenditures were up by about 5.4%. Let's see what else. So this year or last year, 21-22, we had 4 electric buses on order. We added 2 electric buses this year, so we have 6 buses total on order. And at the end of this last fiscal year, we received 1 bus on June 16th. All the buses are hopefully fully grant funded. There may be pieces of the infrastructure that we'll have to pay for. This one is preschool. And so again, here's where I thought we were going to end up. Here's where we ended up. Here you can see we received an allocation that was much larger than our earned allocation, if you will. So our earned allocation was about $30,000. We actually received from MCOE $74,000. Our total revenues were 94,000, and our total expenditures were about 96,000. So this is how we looked compared to last year. And again, you can see our revenues were much higher because of the one-time allocation from MCOE. Our expenditures this year, 96,000 compared to about 83,000 last year. And then this last one is cafeteria. And let's see. So this year we had revenues of 250,000. So here's where you can see the change in revenues. So this year we had about $80,000 in revenue compared to 54,000 last year. And our federal revenue was also up over last year. And so a lot of this section here is about universal meals. So that, we benefited from that. Sales came in at about 18,000. So sales pre-pandemic in the cafeteria were always around the 40,000 mark. So we have a ways to go to bring our sales back up to where they were previously. We received some one-time supply chain dollars, and we also have the fair market value cash in here. Our expenditures were up by about $16,000, $334 versus $318. And we made a general fund contribution of about 83,000 as opposed to 110 projected. I don't know, in this coming year, I don't know how the new cafeteria up at the high school is going to affect the number of meals we serve, and which then would affect our reimbursement rates from both state and federal, and possibly our costs. So here's where we were compared to last year. We had revenue that was higher by 65,000 in 22-23 over 21-22, and our expenditures were up by about the same amount. In 22-23, we served a total of 43,000 meals, which ends up being about 238 meals per day. And you can see that's up from last year, but kind of on par with the 2 years prior. And then this is our COVID funding. So this is I kind of call this like the first round of COVID funding. So this doesn't include the more recent stuff that they're giving for learning loss. This was all about, truly dealing with the pandemic, all the federal dollars mostly. And so we were awarded $1.7 million. So far, we've spent through 22-23, we spent $1.5 million. We still have about 200,000 left to spend. And all of it is due, needs to be spent this year. So 63% has been spent on salary and benefits. 15% has been spent on supplies for, a lot of technology, PPE, learning hubs, doing distance learning and then bringing kids back. 10% was spent on services, and a bulk of that was student and staff internet for distance learning. But we also had software and online subscriptions, and we had tents for outdoor learning and meal pickup and all that. 9.8% was spent on to help support the district network upgrade, and the other part of that upgrade is being funded by E-rate. And then we had about 1.5% in indirect costs. So the remaining 11%, most of this money here that we have to spend this year is slated to go against salary and benefits. Any questions on any of it?
See anybody?
No. Okay.
What are E-rates?
What was that?
Tobin has a question.
Can you explain actually from a couple slides ago the high school cafeteria and how that money was moved from like the bond money into the whatever fund that was paid for, and does that free up more money for the fittings and fixtures in the bond budget?
Oh, let's see. I think it was back here. So yeah, I'm thinking, I don't remember exactly how much it was. I want to say it was close to 20,000. I want to say it was like 17,000. And what I did was I went through the furniture list, and cafeteria tables, chairs, those types of things are what we paid for out of this KIT grant. And it had, it was paid with bond money, and I moved it from the bond fund to this KIT grant fund. And I think it captured all of the tables and chairs in the, I guess it's called the Student Union cafeteria. So yeah, it would have freed up about $17,000 in the bond fund.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
And one more question?
Sure.
Because, you can just see on the same slide here that so that the unaudited actuals are substantially better. How much of that moves, and maybe you'll address this, moves into the future, and how much of that is just all this one-time things?
So a lot of it is one time. I won't address it probably, I didn't do a multi-year for this presentation. So I'll do a multi-year at the next fiscal meeting, at the next financial committee meeting. But, let's go back here. So the dollars that are ongoing are generally in the unrestricted section. So the LCFF funding, $27,000 is ongoing. So that's recurring revenue. That's, money that we can use for raises and whatnot. The state revenue that's increased, that's lottery. So lottery is dependent on our ADA and the rate that they fund it. So it generally, recently it hasn't gone down. Generally it stays pretty stable or it goes up. But our lottery number, our lottery fund, we use mostly for utilities. And then the local revenues, this again, this is also one time. Interest rates are fluctuate, however, and donations are a one-time source. And so I would say most of the savings we're seeing are really in one-time dollars. This, in federal revenue, we had an increase in Title I, and that could be considered ongoing as long as the demographics in the district's footprint stay the same. So Title I funding really has nothing to do with school children, and it has nothing to do with free and reduced meals. It has everything to do with how the census report is completed by the families in the district's footprint. But those dollars can be considered ongoing with the caveat that if something happened, it could go down depending on how information is gathered. So yeah, so I would say a lot of the savings that we're seeing right now are, from one-time dollars. The savings well, the bond savings, we're going to a KIT grant that's one-time dollars. So I do think the one-time dollars will help see us through something. So like the dollars that we're using for to help support salaries, the Learning Recovery Block Grant, the Art and Music Block Grant, those dollars we're using to help support salaries, while we figure out what we're going to do. I don't know. Does that answer your question? Uh-huh.
Things like the additional special education dollars that we got from MCOE were actually covering expenses that we hadn't anticipated and weren't budgeted. So that was really not really additional income.
No. And, it's one time in nature. We're not going to get this, the reason there was an additional revenue was because, somewhere along the line, somebody couldn't spend it. And so we just happened to be the recipient, it worked in our favor, but it's not likely to happen again.
Diane has a question. She's walking over to the microphone.
Okay. So I had a question. Do we know when we can expect those new buses? And is the amount that we're paying in busing, I assume that's for like borrowing buses and repairing buses, is the cost of the infrastructure for the electric buses going to just kind of take the place of what we've been paying for maintaining old buses?
So the cost of the infrastructure is covered. There are pieces of the infrastructure. Let's see. I'm trying to. So I think the last number that Seal and I kind of talked about with dollars that may not be grant funded, kind of was in the $50,000-$60,000 range. And so those are dollars that we're going to have to come up with if we can't find some other way to pay for it. But most of the infrastructure is paid for, or will be paid for through grants. Part of the infrastructure is being installed by local electricians. And so when we have a local person doing it, we all feel like we need to pay that local person right away. We can't say to the local electrician, thank you for doing this work, but you're going to have to wait till we get the grant money. So as an example, when we received the bus in June, that bus was about $400,000. We don't have $400,000 to pay for a bus. We have a grant through the state to pay for the bus. So the bus company delivered the bus, and they know they have to wait until the grant is awarded before they get paid. So they're sitting on an invoice that we are not going to pay until the grant is funded, and they know that. Some of the grants are also funding the infrastructure. So the people who do this for a living, sell school buses and do the big infrastructure piece of it, know that they're working on grant dollars. But our local electricians, we don't feel like we can tell them you have to wait for the grant to be funded. So we feel like we should pay them. And then when the grant is funded, we recoup that money. So that's part of it too, the timing of when everything happens, the timing of when the grants are funded, and the timing of when we have to pay everything out is part of, it's a cash flow issue. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess the other part was like, do we know when those other buses are coming?
No, we don't. We didn't even know the bus was coming on June 16th. On June 14th, or 2 or 3 days before that, we got an email saying the bus is arriving. Somebody needs to be there. So no, we don't.
And I assume like in your multi-year projections, you're still budgeting in for like what we're currently spending on busing per year?
Yeah.
Though, I mean, we've been told it's most likely going to be in the spring of 2024, right?
Right, yeah, we have estimates, but it's still, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, I mean, we probably should ask this question of Seal. So when the new electric bus comes, so like the electric bus we have now, we haven't even put it in service yet because we didn't have the infrastructure in order to charge the batteries and all that. When the bus goes out, the bus comes back, it needs to charge. That's not set up yet. So we have the bus, we can't use it yet because we're getting the infrastructure set up. So we're still running all of our old buses. When we take possession of the bus and when the grant is funded, we have to give up an old bus. So the grants are set up so that, the new green buses come in, the old smoky buses go out. And so I don't know when that's going to happen, probably not until we get the infrastructure set up so we can actually use the electric bus. But the budget is set up ongoing for the system we have now, the transportation system we have now, until we get the new buses in and we know what they're going to cost.
Okay, thanks.
We can now make a motion to approve the unaudited financial report for last fiscal year. Would someone make that motion?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Aaron, would you please call the roll?
Student trustee Kvinzland.
Yeah.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee James.
Yes.
Okay, item 10.5. Jason is recommending we make, is it just one change to the calendar?
Yeah, so the board workshop in January is scheduled over a break. That break runs through that week. So if we could just change January 3rd to January 10th, I think the proposed was in your packet.
Yes. Pretty simple. Someone make a motion to make that change?
I'll move to make that change.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Aaron, would you please call the roll?
Student trustee Kvinzland.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee James.
Yes.
Item 10.6 is consideration of resolution 2023-16, sufficiency of instructional materials. We had no complaints, and we are saying that we do have adequate supplies of instructional materials. Does anyone want to ask any other questions, or ready to have a motion on this?
Is this a standard thing we have to do every September?
Yep.
Okay. I'm happy to move to approve Resolution 2022-16.
2023-16.
We should probably make that change in the document then.
Probably should.
Okay.
On the agenda, yes.
Let's
right.
move to approve Resolution 2023-16 then. With that change.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mark has seconded. Aaron, would you please call the roll?
Student trustee Kvinzland.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee James.
Yes.
Our next item, 10.7, is Resolution 2023-17, which is the adoption of the 2022-23 actual and the 2023 and 2024 budget GAN limit. Meg, are you still with us?
Yes.
Do you want to give a one-sentence explanation of what the GAN limit is?
Translate from the Latin for us.
With 7 semicolons.
I'm teasing. The GAN limit is a law that tried to fix overspending of public monies from everything from the state government down to school boards and special districts. And they allow a certain amount of inflation per year, and then you have to be within that limit as it's been adjusted over time. The reality is, though, that if we were to ever exceed the limit, we would borrow from other districts who have not exceeded their limit. So it would not have any practical impact on us. Am I correct in stating that, Meg?
Yes.
Yes.
So we go through this very extensive piece of paperwork. How many hours would you estimate it takes to fill out that paperwork?
The state software does it. All I have to do is go through and put in our Medicare rates for current year and budget year, and then look to section 10, I think it is, to make sure that we're at 0. And if we're not, one of these sections, I think it's 10, make sure that we're at 0. If we're not at 0, then I have to change the resolution to essentially say we need to increase our limit or not.
Okay. Any other questions? Again, this is something we do every year at this time. Would someone make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-17?
I so move.
I'll second.
Aaron, would you please call the roll?
Student trustee Kinson?
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee James?
Yes.
All right. Are there things that aren't on our list of future agenda items that we want to be sure that we're conscious of as we plan future agendas?
I'd like to put back on the agenda the listserv issue,
Oh, okay.
a future agenda.
We can do that.
Okay.
Do you want to put that on the list?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
I ask that we review attendance during the year, probably more than once.
Are you talking about our we'll get at our next meeting, we'll probably have the seabeds in, so we get those figures. But you're talking about
anything we're doing to improve that.
Chronic absenteeism.
Chronic absenteeism.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a national problem.
Indeed.
It's not Mendocino.
But ours is particularly bad.
Yes.
Okay. All right. At this point, we will adjourn. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is October 19th at the Albion School. And we will have a board workshop in the first week in October.
Yeah, October 4th.
Okay.
That's just for you. Do you have a pen?
No.